Good morning, everyone. Let me first and foremost welcome you all to the African Development Bank and welcome you to this building. This building is, we have just moved out of this building to our headquarter building. And so we also retain this building, so we move in and out. And sorry I couldn't be here right on time. I had a board meeting this morning that we had just concluded. Your Excellency, President Kufuor, former President of Ghana and Chair of the Global Panel on Food Systems and Nutrition. It's good to see you, sir, here. And every time that I see President Kufuor and we're talking about nutrition, I feel that that's exactly what we should do for everybody, is to be tall, lanky, well-fed, like President Kufuor. And I always say President Kufuor is Africa's gentle giant, and that's exactly what we want all of our kids to be, like you. So very welcome, sir. Let me say how delighted I am that President Rajao Nari Mapianina, the President of the Republic of Madagascar, has agreed to join the African Leaders for Nutrition. And I was just recently in Madagascar, and so I'm delighted His Excellency has accepted. I'm even more excited that the Minister of Finance and our own Governor is here from Madagascar. So welcome, Governor, to the bank. I know we also have Mr. Kofi Annan, the former UN Secretary General, who is also a member of the panel and Leaders Network for Nutrition, and is represented here by my Tesfaye Tekle, who we've worked together for many, many years. It's good to see you. Let me also welcome by video Jamie Cooper. Thank you, Jamie. It's good to see you. Let me as well say how delighted I am that Dr. Grassa Machel has also accepted to be part of the African Leaders for Nutrition. I understand she'll be sending a video message. I'm also delighted that the FAO Director General, Gracio Grezano da Silva, has also agreed to join the African Leaders for Nutrition. Interestingly, we met in Madagascar when I was there. We were there just about the same time when we were talking about nutrition. So, and I'm very glad that he's been represented by Bukar Tijani, the FAO Assistant Director General for Africa, that is here. So welcome. And Bukar Tijani and I were co-ministers in Nigeria. He was Minister of State for Agriculture. So this is my brother for a long time. So you most welcome. I'm also delighted that Dangote Foundation is represented by the CEO, Sura. It's good to see you and welcome. And I hope Aliko is doing well. Okay, despite all the economic hardships. And it's great to have you. Professor Sandy Thomas, and from the Global Panel, it's good to have you as well joining us. And from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, obviously we all know how committed Bill and Melinda are personally to the issue of malnutrition. And with each life matters, each life matters is what they always say. And so I'm very delighted that Sean is here with us, so welcome. And I'm also delighted that all the other colleagues are here, and welcome to this meeting. Let me thank Sunita Pitamba, our Director for Human Capital, for organizing this meeting and bringing us all together. You look like you're well-nourished this morning. So let me welcome you formally to the first meeting of the African Leaders for Nutrition Champions. Let me especially welcome former President John Kufuor of Ghana, Chairman of the Global Panel on Agriculture and Food Systems for Nutrition. I would like to express my deepest gratitude to the government of Madagascar, who is being represented here today by the Minister of Finance, Mr. Francois Rakotori Manana. During my visit to Madagascar last month, I took stock of the huge need to alleviate the scourge of malnutrition in that country, and I would like to commend your efforts. One of the things that I came back from Madagascar more excited about malnutrition was when I visited a place called Bamangoki. When I went to Bamangoki, I saw a lot of people there, and I saw all these kids, and I asked them to come closer so I could interact with them. And there was one of these kids whose name is Antonio. And I couldn't believe, I was so sure Antonio was a 5-year-old. And so I asked Antonio to come closer. And Mr. President, as Antonio came closer, I asked him, I thought, was primary 1 or primary 2, or how are you? And from the sound of his voice, I knew I was wrong right away. Antonio wasn't a 5-year-old. Antonio was a 13-year-old. And that's exactly what you call stunting. That comes out of malnutrition. And Africa has so many Antonios like that. In fact, to be precise, we have 54 million such people like Antonio who suffer from stunting. We have an additional 14 million that suffer from wasting just because of their size. You got another 10 million that suffer from obesity just because they're eating too much. And when you look at somebody like Antonio, you ask yourself, what exactly does this mean for Africa? It means for Africa that we're having so many 58 million stunted children. It means that those are 58 million potential labor workforce in Africa that Africa is going to lose, whose productivity is going to be low, whose future income earnings are going to be low, so Africa loses so much. And in fact, the estimates are very clear from UNICEF that Africa loses roughly $25 billion a year because of malnutrition, in particular also stunting. The impacts are immense. The children that are stunted today means that you're going to have stunted economies tomorrow. So you have stunted children today means stunted economies tomorrow. And when we talk about, we are here at the African Development Bank, we are delighted to host this particular meeting. And as president of the bank, I think about the economic growth of nations and what we need to do. We have choice in building infrastructure. Infrastructure is very important, road, rail, ports, and all the things that allow Africa to be competitive on infrastructure is very crucial. But I can't think of anything more important, though, than brain power. Because economies grow and prosper and have wealth, not just based on the physical infrastructure they have, but actually based on the brain power they have. And so when you look at this, you realize that the most important thing is the gray matter infrastructure. That infrastructure, the cells that actually connect the brain so well, is what determines what the wealth of nations will look like. Mr. President, I'm just coming from the World Food Prize event in Iowa. And obviously you, Mr. President, one of our distinguished leaders that have won the World Food Prize. And by the way, I went there and I saw your very nice picture in the Hall of Laureates that they have there. And one of the things that happened was myself and Jim Kim, the president of the World Bank, were invited to be the keynote speakers at this year's event. And so Jim was obviously being a medical doctor, is talking about things from the medical perspective, and I'm talking about it from also agricultural perspective. You can see that you need food, you need health. In fact, your food, I think it was Hippocrates that said, let your food be your medicine, and your medicine thy food. And so it's very clear that if we are going to address the issue of malnutrition, we have to have a multi-pronged approach. We have to look at agriculture. We have to look at water. We have to look at sanitation. We have to make sure that we, in particular, make sure that kids are getting not just food, enough food, but they are getting enough nutritious food for a healthy living that allows them to be able to unleash their full potential. One of the things that President of the World Bank showed was a slide that showed the neurons in the heads of those kids that are stunted and those kids that are not stunted. And it's so striking to see the difference. So I really believe that gray matter infrastructure is the most important infrastructure that we must build for Africa. The world is changing. We are in a world of fourth industrial revolution. Skills, knowledge, capacity to engage in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, the things that are going to drive the world. But at the end of the day, if you are stunted and you don't have that capacity to engage, it means Africa will lose out big time on this. Now, the issue has been around for quite a long time about malnutrition. And I want to say, Mr. President, sometimes we get used to a bad thing, that the abnormal becomes the normal. Because it's silent hunger, you don't see it. Therefore, we don't take action on it. But I think, for me, it's one of the most important factors that is holding back Africa's development today, and that will slow down Africa's development in the future if we do not deal with it. The question we must ask ourselves is then how? I think in dealing with it, we must start with political accountability. A political accountability for the malnutrition we see today, because it is absolutely not acceptable that Africa is having so many stunted children. That's why I would like, in particular, to thank His Excellency President Kufuor for his outstanding global leadership, but also leadership in Africa on addressing this issue. But also want to thank the President of Madagascar for so generously accepting to also be part of this, as well as Bill and Melinda Gates and Jamie Cooper of the Big Win Philanthropy, Aliko Dangote of the Dangote Foundation, the FAO Director General, and Dr. Graça Machel, and other African heads of state, as well as the African Union Commission Chairperson, Dr. Dlamini Zuma, for all accepting to be part of this. When President Kufuor called a meeting for us in Ghana, we were all there with him in Ghana. And that was where we collectively decided with the global panel on agriculture and food systems that it is very important to set up what is called the African Leaders for Nutrition. And these African Leaders for Nutrition will be able then to push the agenda on solving the problems we see today. And when Kofi Annan was UN Secretary General, he pushed for the Millennium Development Goals. In fact, I haven't seen anybody so passionate about getting things done to ensure that we have inclusive growth better than Kofi Annan. And he pushed hard on this issue of hunger and malnutrition. He had a hunger task force that he set up. And to have Mr. Annan join forces with us in pushing for this political accountability with all the other leaders is critically indispensable. So from the global level, the Africa level, the African Union level, and the technical institutions that we're working with, from the World Bank to the FAO to IFA, the World Food Program, and the foundations like Jamie Cooper's foundation, Aliko Dangote Foundation, I think it's an alliance for action on malnutrition that we have. The second issue has to do with how do we measure the results and the progress. I think that is why I am delighted that over the last couple of months, Sunita and team have been working with you all, including the Global Malaria Alliance, on how we are going to actually develop an index to measure nutritional progress on malnutrition. So Africa Nutrition Index, it's one that is very critical. What you can measure, you can't really say you're doing it. And so the ability to measure is particularly important. And I think this index is going to help us to be able to rank countries on how they are doing. Remember when Mo Ibrahim started the Mo Ibrahim Governance Index, and none of us knew that it was going to have the kind of huge impact it's having today in talking at the political conscience of our leaders about good governance, transparency, accountability. We want good governance transparency, accountability, and action on malnutrition, stunting in Africa. And that's why this Africa Nutrition Index is so vital. The third part of it is the role of the African Union. The Agenda 2063 was very, very clear, the Africa we want. But certainly the Africa we don't want is the Africa with 58 million children that are already disempowered because of stunting and malnutrition. And so the convening power of the African Union is crucial. I got a letter from the African Union chairperson, Commission chairperson, Madam Dlamini Zuma. She is attending an event, so she cannot join us. But I want to tell you that the African Union is strongly supportive of really getting this done. The other area that we have to then look at is how we mobilize financing for it. How much will it cost to deal with it? Roughly $7 billion a year will be needed. I was with Bill and Melinda Gates and the World Bank at the event that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation co-sponsored with the World Bank on investment in nutrition that we held in Washington earlier this year. So we're talking about $7 billion a year. I am not scared at all about those numbers because the cost of inaction far exceeds the cost of action. And so what we've got to do is to mobilize the resources to deal with it. One way that I know we're going to be discussing today is a grant system that allows countries to have incentives for action that they take on the issue of malnutrition. But I would like to propose to you for consideration today another approach in addition to that, which is what I call nutrition social impact bonds. What will a nutrition social impact bond do? It will allow countries, I'm glad the Minister of Finance of Madagascar is here, to be able to mobilize resources to deal with malnutrition today. And as they invest in all those things in malnutrition today, it will allow them to unlock a streams of benefits into the future, including a healthier, more productive workforce, including top talents that can actually do great jobs and raise productivity of their economies in future, ability to improve taxes and revenues well into the future, because you can't get taxes and revenues from the future if you have people that are not well fed and therefore can't be productive to the full potential. So these nutrition social impact bonds will allow us to crowd in financing at scale to address many of the issues that have to be done on malnutrition in Africa. And what are those priorities? It's clear we've got to finance mothers so that we reduce first maternal mortality. Maternal health is crucial. Health of children, especially in the first 1,000 days, is the key. Because if we don't get there within the first 1,000 days, then we've lost them for life. I remember what Bill Gates said, I think it's 2014, when he was talking about that the future of Africa and so on depends on what we do with the investments in the children today. And so I want to say that we need to invest a lot in the first 1,000 days. We also have to invest in new tools that deliver cheaper sources of nutrition. Fortification is one of them. I think it's clear when you have both iron, zinc, vitamin A, these are crucial. Just imagine today in Africa, kids will lose probably about 100 million that will go blind just because of a basic nutrient, like lack of vitamin A. And mothers die because they lack vitamin A, and because they lack iron at childbirth. Why should anybody have to die to bring a good life to our world? And why will any child, having been born into that world, not have the potential to live a productive, life in that world because of basic cheap things that we're talking about. So I really believe that fortification has to be a big part of the agenda. The World Food Prize this year was given to 4 people for their work on biofortification. Biofortification is one of the cheapest sources of actually tackling malnutrition, from orange-fleshed sweet potato with high levels of beta-carotene to high lysine maize, to iron-fortified sorghum, to yellow cassava that has high level of beta-carotene, and golden rice that has high level of beta-carotene. Now, these are crops that are loaded with nutrients, so it's cheap sources of finance or for nutrition. I believe we should promote massively the scaling up of biofortified crops in Africa. But of course, regardless of what we do, if we don't take a multi-sectoral approach, we cannot succeed. We have to link education, water, health, sanitation, and women empowerment. And on the issue of women empowerment, I am fully convinced that unless we improve the incomes of women, we will not succeed on the issue of malnutrition and stunting. When you empower a woman, you empower a household. And women that are empowered feed their children better. And I think they also feed their husbands well, too. So I think that's a benefit for everybody. So to get nutrition right, when we get the issues of women empowerment right, we will get nutrition right. And I think this is very crucial for us. Therefore, we within the bank have an initiative that we call the Affirmative Finance Action for Women in Africa, where we are trying to mobilize $3 billion specifically for women entrepreneurs so that we can empower them, so that they can have the incomes to send their kids to school, their girls to school, to provide water, sanitation, and good nutritious foods for their households. Let me say that partnerships is going to be the key for success. It will take more than the African Development Bank. That's why I'm delighted to have all of you here. Partnerships with the private sector, partnership with the civil society, partnership with the public sector, and partnership with global philanthropic institutions such as the Dangote Foundation and the Jimmy Cooper's Big Win Philanthropy, Gates Foundation, and others. Partnerships are going to be key. And that's why FAO can bring to us strong analytical components about how we analyze the issues of malnutrition. Where are we? And that's why World Food Program can help us in delivering good quality foods to a lot of, we have today the refugees that are just increasing all over the place. And so partnerships, partnerships, and partnerships. In closing, it is easy to talk about malnutrition and stuff like that when we eat well, and we forget those that don't have. Ever since I left Madagascar, I have never forgotten that young boy called Antonio. And I spoke about Antonio at the World Food Prize event in Des Moines, Iowa. And I would like to say, since I have the opportunity to have the Minister of Finance here, and let me also thank Edie Melali for joining us, the Executive Director in charge of Madagascar, who pushed hard for me to go to Madagascar. That single experience left me totally changed on this issue. And Mr. Minister, I therefore made the decision with my wife that we will adopt Antonio. Because one thing that he told me was that he wanted to be a medical doctor. And to be a medical doctor means you have to be well fed, you got to go to good school, you have to be able to do that. So I would like to request, therefore, that you communicate that to Mr. President, and we would like to see him in a great school, and we will foot the cost of his education. And I do pray, and I hope, by the special grace of God, that he'll become a medical doctor, and that one day he'll be able to talk about your food is your medicine, and that your medicine is your food. Let me thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for these very important words. And I think the story of Antonio is coming. We have a presentation which shows Antonio, and I think everybody will be interested to see where we are. Without further ado, I would like to request His Excellency, President Kufuor, to make his statement. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to come and take part in this conference. I should begin by thanking President Adesina for the exceptional leadership he's showing in his office as president of this unique bank of our continent. The bank's name was not taken in vain. Bank for Africa's Development. If we're going to develop our continent, then it's the people we want to develop. Infrastructure is important. Telecommunications, energy, all these things are important. But they are important because of what they would do for the people. But we've just heard from President Adesina that perhaps the most basic infrastructure of all is the brain power, which is true. I don't think anybody can dispute that. Unfortunately, we tend to take the energizer and the life-giving power of nutrition. And now we are all waking up to the urgency of attention that we must give to nutrition of our people. We know, we've heard so much about it, how Africa lags behind the rest of the world because of stunting, because of malnutrition generally, anemia, and so forth and so on. In all our conferences, these topics are addressed. We go to the African Union, year in, year out. Our leaders talk about them. But what has Africa been doing about nutrition? And this is why I am so happy that at long last, we've got leadership at the bank that has taken up the responsibility to set up the forum, which thankfully our leaders at the highest level on the continent are accepting to be part of. So the focus is given on nutrition. So Africa will enhance its human resource development for it to be able to take its place in the community of the peoples and races of the world. Today, we are here to talk of the annual accountability scorecard. Scorecard, very important, because that, hopefully, would focus our leaders. And as the president said, it's the political leadership of accountability that would really activate the continent's drive to give nutrition to our peoples. The leaders must be accountable, and where we have evidence-based scorecard to show which of our nations are doing well in providing for nutritious development of the peoples, then those who are perhaps not pulling their weight in a way would be shamed to sit up. And I believe it's only an institution like this bank that can do this work, to get the leaders to sit up and look at how they are performing. The idea truly is not to shame our leaders, because with all the good intentions, the reality, again, on our continent is that perhaps most of us are not as equipped, resource-wise, as they should be. Most of our leaders are having countries that may not be able to budget enough to provide the inputs for policy that would let us realize the cross-cutting necessity of nutrition being taken into account by, say, the ministries of Food and Agriculture, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, and so forth and so on. We've listened to the president, whom I'm supporting totally, for brilliant ideas. And it's not just ideas, philosophers' ideas hanging in the air. The ideas really that he's experienced on the ground. For our leaders to agree to submit to the establishment of the scorecard and work to realize the purpose of the scorecard, we need to approach them carefully. Leaders tend to be like prima donnas, very sensitive. They don't want to be lectured. But on nutrition, since it's the most basic infrastructure, I believe we should find a way to let the leaders sit up. And I believe this is what this conference is about. Next year, at the summit of the African Union, we must find a way to make a presentation for the leaders to accept, to be guided by the scorecard, letting them appreciate that the scorecard's intention is not just to show anybody up, but really to let us know how our very big continent, and Africa is very big, large populations, how to get some sort of uniform movement on the continent so the development happens not lopsidedly, say in Southern Africa or West Africa or Eastern Africa or Northern Africa, but across the board on the continent. It is the scorecard that will let us know our strong points and our weak points. So then the leaders together in conference would find ways and means to adopt the policies that would help those that are not as advantaged as those who are advantaged. We've heard of the creation of a bond, nutrition bond. The countries that may not be able to do this, perhaps the bank here might be able to somehow intervene to push these countries up. Those who can successfully issue the bonds would be encouraged to set about it quickly, so the funding would be there. The donor partners, using the scorecard, would know where to perhaps emphasize in giving support, so the nutrition would be prioritized. Policy-wise, within our individual countries, the governments would be guided by the scorecard to know how to get the ministries and the civil services to move out of their turf fighting so they cooperate to achieve the cross-cutting objectives of the fight against nutrition. There are so many things going for the scorecard concept. And I'm happy to hear that already we've got the partnerships, not only of the leaders, the political leaders, even though they are the central figures to really move the policies, but also big names like you've listed. Yes, and Kofi Annan, Dangote, Bill Emeli, who have been on board for quite some time. Everybody is coming on board because truly Africa, which has been described as the last stage of human development, would quickly move to take its proper position within the global context. So, Mr. Chairman, congratulations. You've spoken for me. My happiness is that I've been searching to leave a legacy because I really served my time as president of Ghana. I've been retired for almost a decade now, and nature is taking account of me. Time, perhaps I've done my bit altogether. What would send me off very happily is the knowledge that I had the privilege to be part of this movement, which perhaps is not, to use a fashionable term these days, not as sexy as talking the big things of peace and this and that on the continent, but which truly is the most basic infrastructure we want for our people of Africa. I'm also flattered that the president has virtually described me as the mascot for nutrition on the continent of Africa. I'm happy for that. So thank you for inviting me, and I'm happy to be here. I should let you know, though, that currently the force that moves me is the foundation I've created in Ghana, not just for Ghana, but also for our continent. The foundation's name is Leadership, Governance, and Development. And you are showing it. I have come to believe, after a long service in my country, that without good leadership, you can't hope for good governance. And is good governance meaning inclusion of all people of the nation. It's through that you can really get any real development. And when you are talking development, it must be human-centered. It's not the structures, big buildings, big roads, and so forth and so on. It's the people. Because I believe that without transforming the lives of the ordinary people, you cannot hope to transform your nation or the continent, for that matter. So, thank you once again. And the bank should not forget my foundation in its affairs. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Now that we have an official mascot, we will have to produce one, but it'll be smaller because you're big. Thank you very much for those very strong words. Mr. President, you said, I think it's about, as you close, on the importance of leadership and governance and accountability. And I want to say that these are the things that will guide us as we proceed at the African Leadership for Nutrition. We have the leaders, and these are your global leaders, and that are known for results. And I think that results are the things that are going to matter. I remember when I worked for Mr. Kofi Annan with Tesfaye Tekley, Mr. Annan used to say something to us, and he would say, well, people are promised this money and that money and all of that. He said that the only promise that matters is the one that is fulfilled, right? Yeah. You know, so I think that accountability is the key. So thank you very much, Mr. President, for that.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We are very grateful to His Excellency, the President of Madagascar, for this statement. I think it captures very much the very important areas that we need to focus on. May I, with your permission, request His Excellency, the Minister of Finance, to make his statement. Thank you.
Excellence, Monsieur le Président du groupe de la Banque africaine de développement, Son Excellence John Tiofor, ancien président de la République de Ghana, Madame l'administrateur de la banque, Madame Soraya Milali, en charge de Madagascar, honorables invités et participants ici présents, Mesdames et Messieurs les membres de la haute direction de la banque, honorable assistance. Mesdames et Messieurs, c'est un grand honneur et un réel plaisir pour moi d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui pour représenter son Excellence, Monsieur le Président de la République, à cette réunion des membres de haut niveau de l'Alliance des dirigeants africains pour la nutrition. J'aimerais donc saisir cette occasion pour remercier premièrement le président du groupe de l'Abad pour son invitation, pour sa louable initiative, pour cette réunion très importante. Et surtout, comme l'a dit si bien tout à l'heure Monsieur le Président du Ghana, de votre très fort leadership. Et deuxièmement, je tiens aussi à exprimer ici les excuses de son Excellence Monsieur le Président de la République de Madagascar, qui aurait bien voulu être parmi nous ce jour, mais n'a pu finalement faire le déplacement pour ses multiples obligations. Comme vous avez pu voir et entendre tout à l'heure dans son discours, 9% des enfants malgaches de moins de 5 ans sont atteints de la malnutrition aiguë, forme de malnutrition frappant principalement les régions du sud et de l'est de Madagascar, avec des taux largement supérieurs à celui de la moyenne nationale. Et un enfant sur 2 de moins de 5 ans, soit au total 2 millions d'enfants malgaches, souffre également de la malnutrition chronique. Et je dois ajouter que la malnutrition dans le pays a causé plus de 4 millions de cas de maladie des enfants en 2013 et 43,9% de la mortalité des enfants ont été causés par cette malnutrition. Seulement 12% des petits-enfants malgaches participent à un enseignement préscolaire. Et l'on estime que 1 400 000 enfants en âge d'aller à l'école, primaire je veux dire, n'y vont pas. Et parmi ceux qui y vont, seule la moitié atteindra le 5e niveau. Mais la vie des mères, Monsieur le Président, qui joue un rôle essentiel dans le développement des enfants, comme vous avez dit tout à l'heure, est très difficile aussi. 10 femmes meurent en couche tous les jours et 3 d'entre elles sont des mères adolescentes. En 15 ans, cette situation a peu évolué. En tout, les effets cumulés de la malnutrition en matière de santé, d'éducation et de productivité engendre une perte de 1,5 million de dollars par an à notre pays. C'est pour dire que Madagascar fait face à d'énormes défis de développement socio-économique qui affectent nos enfants et qui pourraient affecter les générations futures si nous n'agissons pas rapidement. Comme vous le savez en effet, la malnutrition, en plus d'être une menace à la survie des enfants, compromet aussi leur développement cognitif et leur capacité à produire en tant qu'adultes, réduisant ainsi le potentiel économique du ménage et du pays et perpétuant la pauvreté. Face à ce sérieux problème de santé publique et de développement, le gouvernement de Madagascar a pris un certain nombre de mesures au niveau politique et stratégique, dont premièrement l'inscription de la lutte contre la malnutrition parmi les priorités du Plan national de développement 2015-2019. Il y a aussi la poursuite des activités de l'Office national de nutrition créé en 2004 après l'élaboration de la politique nationale de nutrition, office placé directement sous tutelle de la primature. Il y a aussi l'élaboration de 2 générations de plans nationaux pluriannuels de nutrition, plan 2004-2009 et le plan 2012-2015 qui sera mis à jour par après. L'adhésion au pays au mouvement international Scaling Up Nutrition qui vise à coaliser les efforts et les ressources pour la lutte contre la malnutrition constitue aussi une des mesures qui a été prise. Et enfin, il y a l'adhésion récente à la déclaration d'urgence humanitaire des pays de la SADC, et cela en réponse à la situation qui prévaut dans le Sud. Monsieur le Président, honorables invités, Mesdames et Messieurs, au niveau opérationnel, le gouvernement de Madagascar, en collaboration avec ses partenaires techniques et financiers, se sont également mobilisés depuis l'année 2015 afin d'apporter une réponse à la situation de crise qui prévaut au sud de Madagascar. Des dépistages massifs ont été réalisés dans les localités affectées et ont permis d'identifier et de traiter les cas de malnutrition aiguë dans 158 centres de santé et dans 528 sites de nutrition communautaire. Ainsi, plus de 61 000 cas de malnutrition ont été pris en charge, permettant de réduire le risque de mortalité. Permettez-moi ici d'adresser les plus vifs remerciements du gouvernement de Madagascar et de la population malgache à l'endroit de la Banque africaine de développement pour ses contributions répétées à cette réponse. En effet, en 2015, une première contribution de la Banque africaine de développement à travers le Programme alimentaire mondial a permis d'offrir une assistance alimentaire d'urgence à 28 000 personnes, des suppléments nutritionnels à 20 500 femmes et enfants et des repas scolaires à 47 000 élèves. Et en cette année 2016, une seconde contribution de la BAD à travers l'UNICEF va permettre de traiter 6 600 enfants malnutris et d'offrir une assistance alimentaire à leurs familles. Je dois dire que les résultats obtenus jusqu'ici par le biais de ces différentes actions sont satisfaisants. Cependant, la situation dans le sud et dans les autres régions vulnérables nécessite encore et dans l'immédiat une attention particulière et une réponse plus accrue car la sécheresse perdure et les risques de cyclones, d'inondations et de l'invasion acridienne restent permanents. Dans le cadre de la lutte contre la malnutrition chronique, plusieurs interventions de nutrition d'envergure nationale ont été entreprises. Il s'agit par exemple de la supplémentation en vitamine A et le déparasitage pendant la semaine de la santé de la mère et de l'enfant. Il y a aussi le traitement des enfants atteints de la malnutrition aiguë, du suivi de la croissance des enfants et de l'éducation nutritionnelle de leur mère à travers plus de 6 000 sites de nutrition communautaire. Et enfin, il y a le programme d'iodation universelle de sel. Cependant, et à l'opposé de la situation qui prévaut dans le Sud, cette lutte contre la malnutrition chronique n'a pas bénéficié d'un appui à la hauteur du défi qu'elle représente. Aussi, pour soutenir le plaidoyer et mobiliser plus de ressources, le gouvernement malgache, avec ses partenaires techniques et financiers, ont développé un plan d'investissement pour la nutrition qui non seulement estime les pertes économiques dues à la malnutrition, mais surtout propose des solutions concrètes en 3 paquets visant prioritairement la population en général, les femmes enceintes et allaitantes et les enfants. Il s'agit du paquet numéro 1, destiné à la population en général et qui inclut l'iodation universelle du sel, la fortification des aliments de grande consommation comme la farine et l'huile. Il y a aussi le paquet numéro 2 pour les femmes enceintes qui comprend le paquet numéro 1 plus les suppléments de vitamines et minéraux, des compléments alimentaires riches en énergie et protéines, le déparasitage et la prévention et le traitement du paludisme. Et enfin, le paquet numéro 3 pour les enfants qui, en plus des paquets 1 et 2, comprend la promotion de bonnes pratiques d'allaitement maternel et de l'alimentation complémentaire, la fortification à domicile, traitement de la malnutrition aiguë et le traitement de la diarrhée. La lutte contre la malnutrition requiert une action multisectorielle. Aussi, en parallèle avec la mise en œuvre de ces paquets d'interventions spécifiques de nutrition, les interventions dans les secteurs de l'agriculture, de la santé, de l'eau, hygiène, assainissement et de la protection sociale devront être intensifiées. Selon les études menées avec les partenaires techniques et financiers dont j'ai mentionné tout à l'heure, la mise en œuvre à l'échelle de ces paquets, dont le coût annuel est estimé à 40 millions de dollars américains, permettra sur une période de 10 ans de réduire de près de 40% les pertes évitables dues à la malnutrition et générer un retour sur investissement de 2 milliards de dollars, soit $1 investi pour $5 gagnés. Monsieur le Président de la Banque africaine de développement, Monsieur le Président Kufuor du Ghana, honorables instances, Mesdames et Messieurs, le gouvernement de Madagascar est résolument engagé à consentir les efforts requis pour inverser les tendances de la malnutrition, afin de créer les conditions d'émergence d'un capital humain adéquat pour une croissance économique soutenue et inclusive. Cependant, nous pouvons relever ces défis sans votre soutien. Soutien technique d'abord, pour nous aider à mettre en œuvre des solutions adaptées et efficaces, mais également un soutien financier. Quant à moi, en tant que ministre des Finances et du Budget de Madagascar, je prends l'engagement de poursuivre les réformes que nous avons déjà entamées afin d'augmenter nos ressources propres internes et rediriger ces ressources vers les secteurs sociaux. Nous avons pu ainsi augmenter les budgets de l'éducation, de la santé et de la nutrition. Mais étant partis d'un niveau extrêmement faible, nous avons besoin de votre aide. La réunion d'aujourd'hui arrive donc à point nommé, car elle vise à fournir de nouvelles orientations et perspectives sur les interventions qui atténueront les problèmes de malnutrition. C'est pour cela que je réitère ici encore une fois nos remerciements à l'endroit du président du groupe de la Banque africaine de développement et de tous ceux et celles qui ont contribué à la réalisation de cet événement d'aujourd'hui. J'invite donc aussi tous les partenaires techniques et financiers ici présents à nous soutenir en se joignant à nous lors de notre conférence des bailleurs aussi et investisseurs qui se tiendra à Paris le 1er et 2 décembre prochain. Nous y présenterons plus en détail encore les actions que nous comptons mener et entreprendre pour mieux lutter contre la malnutrition. Vous conviendrez avec moi que Madagascar est un pays qui vient de sortir d'une crise et que la situation reste encore très fragile. Mais nous avons un plan qui reste à parfaire, bien évidemment, en fonction des résultats de nos travaux ici et des objectifs clairs aussi, nous en avons, y compris celui de réduire la malnutrition chronique. Et enfin, je ne saurais terminer mon allocution sans exprimer ici notre profonde gratitude à l'endroit de vous, Monsieur le Président de la Banque, ainsi qu'à votre épouse, pour cette louable décision d'adopter Antonio. Cela va très droit au cœur et soyez rassurés que je vais rapporter ça à son Excellence, Monsieur le Président de la République, au gouvernement de Madagascar, à toute la population malgache et surtout à la famille d'Antonio, qui serait très certainement très ravie d'entendre cette très bonne nouvelle. Je vous remercie de votre aimable attention.
Je vous remercie beaucoup, Monsieur le ministre des Finances de Madagascar. Je voulais simplement noter 3 choses très importantes dans votre allocution. C'est votre soutien personnel en tant que ministre des Finances pour combler ce grand problème, ce défi dans le pays. Vous avez bien noté que vous avez déjà entamé les programmes d'accélération de financement dans les secteurs sociaux, de l'eau, l'assainissement, la santé, le secteur de la nutrition. Et pour moi, c'est quand je vois un ministre de Finances, parce qu'on peut tout dire, hein? On peut discuter toutes les choses techniques et tout ça là, mais s'il n'y a pas l'argent, qu'est-ce qu'on fait? Ce n'est pas possible. Donc, je voudrais ajouter donc une demande pour vous aussi de faire le rôle de leadership parmi le gouverneur de la banque. En ce qui concerne leur rassemblement autour de cet agenda très critique pour notre continent. Et que aussi vous prenez le rôle de leadership pour la préparation de cette rencontre avec les ministres des Finances et les gouverneurs de la banque pour notre réunion annuelle, la prochaine réunion annuelle qui se tiendra à l'Inde l'année prochaine. La deuxième chose, je pense que les trois volets que vous avez pris en ce qui concerne de votre plan de la nutrition sont très encourageants et je vous félicite beaucoup. Je peux vous simplement dire que la banque va vous soutenir beaucoup dans ce sens. L'administrateur de Madagascar, elle est là, donc on va travailler sur ces sujets, c'est très très important ensemble pour vous. Et finalement, en ce qui concerne la conférence de Bayer, que vous avez dit pour le mois de décembre. Vous pouvez compter sur la forte soutien de la Banque africaine de développement pour cette rencontre. J'avais déjà dit ça pour Monsieur le Président. Donc je crois que ça c'est très très important, surtout quand vous avez dit que tenant compte l'histoire de la fragilité et tous les problèmes et tout ça là, il faut avoir le soutien fort autour du peuple de Madagascar. Donc je peux vous assurer sur ça de la part de la Banque africaine de développement. Une fois de plus, je vous remercie pour toutes les dispositions que vous allez prendre en ce qui concerne Antonio, ça me touche. C'est très très important pour moi et mon épouse. Je vous remercie beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. So we just wanted to share the picture of Antonio. This is indeed an image to remember, and I think the President's statement about his growth is very clear. But we also, Mr. President, are happy to report that there has been a team earlier this year which has visited Madagascar, and we have been able to work with the government to see how we can prioritize their needs. My colleague, Madam Maimouna, was part of that team leading the conversation on nutrition. So with your permission, Mr. President, I'd like to welcome the other partners to also provide their inputs. I'd like to welcome Madam Jamie Cooper to please provide her inputs at this point.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay.
We can hear you very well, and you look so healthy.
I am healthy from the top to about my knees, and then my foot went all horribly wobbly. So I'm really sorry I'm not there in person, but I am not walking terribly well. But it's good that we can connect this way. President Adesina, I have to say to you once again, I am so grateful for your just sustained leadership on this issue. You committed before you took up this role formally that this was going to be one of your centerpieces, and you haven't let us down. And I think that putting central human capacity development is so key to where we're going to go with African development, and your legacy on this is amazing, and I'm really, really grateful. And President Kufuor, to hear you say that you hope this area will become your lasting legacy is very, very moving. I hope it will too. You are a great spokesperson for this issue. So thank you also for your leadership. And I'm really honored to be part of this team. In terms of remarks, I'll be very brief and just say that I've been reflecting on the materials that were circulated for this meeting, as well as the last time most of us were together in Zambia. And here's what I'm taking away. In Zambia, I was so impressed in how we have a growing cohort and a seemingly critical mass of policymakers who really care about this agenda, speak well to it, understand the connection between nutrition and economic development, and are really motivated to do things in their countries. And piece of what I've been reflecting upon from that Zambia meeting was how we lost our moderator. I think Zuair and I were really struck by her questions about the relevance of this discussion and being lost. And what I've been thinking a lot about is if we think of ourselves as a team to create demand, where are those gaps? And clearly one of them is on the what to do. So if we have these ready policymakers, what has to be central? You mentioned President Antecedent fortification, but I think it's so important that we get that scorecard right and that what we measure are really the very key actionable items that go across ministry, but that are really smart and not everything, but the things that will really, really make the biggest difference in addressing this issue. The other is that it won't be enough, or we will make it much harder for policymakers to be successful if our moderator can't follow us and if we don't build demand more broadly than just government leaders. It is really important that we think about how do we talk about malnutrition and stunting more generally so that people can distinguish between hunger and nutrition and why it's so important that they grow those fortified crops. And that we're all working toward the same end. And same with the private sector, same with the question Zuair got about, well, why should a company want to do this if they're not a highly profitable company? That the private sector also embraces that having fully capacitated end users of their products and creating that demand as well as their future workforce depends on having good nutrition, and that they have every self-interest in being part of this journey. So that's what I'm thinking about right now based on the conversations you've stimulated, and really excited to be part of this group and working toward a future on this issue together.
Thank you very much, Jamie, and let me thank you and also the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation we have from Sean, and also the Dangote Foundation for your support for us in building our internal capacity on nutrition within the bank. I think there's a lot of things that we need to continue to discuss, but I just want to say that we really appreciate that support, both financial support but also intellectual input into how we strengthen our capacity to be able to deliver on this issue. So, and I wish you well with your recovery. But keep the smile on. That's very important. Thank you so much, Jamie. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're a little bit short on time, so I'll just quickly move into our next interventions. If can invite Zuaira and then Sean and Mr. Tijani and Mr. Tekle. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. President Adesina, President Kufuor, I bring you greetings from Mr. Aliko Dangote, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. But he said, well, this is what you do anyway, so you're better placed to represent us. I think what I'm really happy about, and I said this to Sean when we were in Zambia, is that it feels like we were extremely, is it lucky? Is it, I mean, we weren't prescient, but to know that this issue of malnutrition was really going to end up being so important to everybody else. So when the foundation, when Dangote Foundation picked fighting malnutrition, severe and acute malnutrition as one of our major areas of focus for the next few years, we didn't really know how everybody else would be supportive of us. So we didn't know that the Gates Foundation was also rejigging their nutrition strategy. We didn't know that you were going to be the president of the African Development Bank and that this was going to be an important issue to you. We just didn't know that all this was going to happen. And so now, in retrospect, we feel really glad that this is one of the topics that other people are aligned with us on. So the reality of the statistics in Nigeria are really horrible. and getting worse by the day with the unfolding crisis in northern Nigeria. And so our focus on the first 1,000 days, treating severe and acute malnutrition, setting up our own RUTF production in Nigeria, using the whole, if you will, strength of our private sector business to work on fortification, because a lot of what we produce is food. And so how do we make sure that we have the right fortification standards in the flour that we sell, and the sugar that we sell, and the vegetable oil, and the tomato paste, et cetera, is really something that the whole Dangote group is really getting behind. And so my general feeling about what we're doing here is it just feels like a validation of what we're trying to do. And you absolutely have our full support. We're very happy to be involved. Everything that we're going to be doing is going to be towards helping bring down these horrendous malnutrition rates in Nigeria. So that's where our energy is focused. So thank you very much for having us, and we look forward to working with everybody.
Thank you so much, Zora. I think that's very important, and I think this situation in Nigeria, we were just recently accompanying the president to Nigeria, and indeed we're trying to make all the efforts to address the emergency in the northeast at least. Very quickly, if I may call upon Sean. This time.
Thank you, Sunita. And I'm actually making a few remarks afterwards, so I'll make my remarks brief right now. President Adesina, President Kufuor, Honorable Minister. I actually arrived in Abidjan Saturday night, and so I had Sunday to do some reflection. And so these are some personal reflections. I've spent about 35 years of my life in tackling malnutrition, and I feel like it's been, in the last year or so, a revolution. The last time I actually, in my prior chapter of my life, I tried to engage the African Development Bank on a nutrition issue, it was when there were multiple partners supporting the West African Health Organization, which is the official health agency of ECOWAS, to organize a private sector, public sector dialogue on food fortification in West Africa. And we were desperately trying to get the African Development Bank to take a leadership role. This was back in 2001 and 2002. And in fact, we could barely even find whom to talk with at the African Development Bank. And so that fortification dialogue did happen. It was originally scheduled to happen in Abidjan. And we know what happened in Cote d'Ivoire on September 19th, 2002. And so coming back here, it's quite miraculous to think that here we are in a situation, I'm personally in a situation where I'm trying to run to keep up with the leadership of the African Development Bank because of the incredible leadership on nutrition. And then you look at the total transformation of Cote d'Ivoire in the last few years. And I think it's really, to me, incredibly inspiring to see President Adesina, your leadership, and then I think very much concretely here on the ground of what's happening in Cote d'Ivoire, and also on the nutrition front, because 2 weeks ago, the Prime Minister of Cote d'Ivoire actually organized a convening on resources to fight malnutrition in this country. So it's actually a very emotional time for me to see, and I think it's illustrative of how there's been a sea change in the way the world is looking at malnutrition, of taking out of this little niche issue that was a marginal health issue to actually being the foundation of development, as President Kufuor has said. And so I'm deeply moved personally, and I know, as you know, our leaders, Bill and Melinda, are deeply committed to continuing to support this effort. And we're just very grateful that we can come in behind you and support your vision. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sean. Indeed, the meeting here led by the Prime Minister was very important, and they managed also to bring a lot of the partners together. I think it's very critical to realize how the Cote d'Ivoire, how Cote d'Ivoire is becoming a regional sort of a center of bringing all the partners together, bringing all the countries. So I think that's and I think it's good that we're here, that we also leverage on that. Very quickly, let me request Mr. Tijani, please.
Thank you so much. First of all, let me apologize on behalf of my Director General, Mr. Jose Graciano de Silva. this is World Food Day week, and he has a number of ministers, other very high-level delegations in Rome, and globally this is happening. He sends his special congratulations to President of African Development Bank, my brother, colleague, and friend. He also sends special greetings to President Kufuor for championing nutrition and other agriculture issues in Africa. Honorable Minister from Madagascar, my DG sends his special appreciation to President of Madagascar. He had a visit, a state visit, was the president of the bank in August. Other African leaders for nutrition members. Very quickly, FAO stands very much in support of what the African Development Bank is doing, and also what is being championed by the African leaders for nutrition. Mr. Graciano has always been a champion from his Zero Hunger in Brazil, and also part of the global panel for agriculture and food systems for nutrition. And he also mentions that he will definitely support this particular and important initiative for Africa. FAO is really looking at a number of issues in Africa, especially in the southern part of Africa and other parts of Africa. There is an emergency declaration because of the El Nino, which His Excellency the Minister from Madagascar has mentioned. And this is a partnership we're championing with other UN agencies, SADC, and also quite a number of countries. But it is also important for FAO, because FAO has been championing the supports which the bank is also supporting for the small island developing countries, seeds, which is a very important aspect of what we're doing. It is also important for me to mention that in the new strategic framework for FAO, it is looking not just at agriculture, but the contributions of agriculture, fishery, livestock, and other aquatic animals to nutrition, so that Africa will end hunger in 2025. FAO has also been a key player and a founder for the CAIDA process, NEPAD, the Malabo Declaration, to see what supports can be given to member countries so that the African Development Bank and leaders for nutrition in Africa will be able to achieve this malnutrition and hunger. This is also part of the broader SDG 2030 agenda of ending hunger in Africa and globally. So it is really an opportunity for FAO to be part of this very noble cause, very noble initiative, and the launch, official launch, I would say, of this high-level meeting by the president of the bank, Dr. Adesina. It has been an opportune time for us. FAO has been on a yearly basis, having the state of food insecurity, having the state of food and agriculture globally, of which Africa has improved, but there's still a lot more to do. The fact is that percentage-wise, percentages are decreasing, but numbers of people who are malnourished are also rising. And this is something that I feel that FAO will definitely commit and continue to commit to members, to the bank, and also countries. Lastly, I want to say that FAO will always be there to partner very strongly with the African Development Bank, its initiatives, other leaders, as well as partners who are looking at how the CAIDA process and also the Malabo Declaration by African leaders will be championed. With that, my DG has committed his supports for African Development Bank, for Madagascar, other countries within the region, and also what other partners are doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think when Vuka and I worked as ministers together in Nigeria, we would go to the north and east from Borno State, where, as you know, they have a lot of challenges as we were just hearing. But I used to always say he is also like President Kufuor, very lanky and so on. So I used to tease him as well that, look, we got to get all the kids in Borno State who like you. So now that you're in leadership posts also at FAO, we thank you very much for your leadership and the support that you bring. And thank in particular Dr. Graciano da Silva for his support. And as I said, I think the meeting that we had briefly with him in Madagascar was very helpful in laying out how the FAO can also help on this particular agenda. So congratulations on a wonderful day, and thank you that you could be here.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I request Mr. Tekle, last but not least, to make a small remark. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Greetings from Mr. Annan to His Excellency, President Kufuor, and to Akin. As Akin initially indicated that Mr. Annan's commitment to food and agriculture and nutrition started when he was Secretary General, although he was not doing anything with agriculture, but during the SDGs, actually the Millennium Development Goals, he came to realize that nutrition was the key to eliminating hunger in Africa and in particular. And at the moment, one of the most important activities for him, although he's engaged most of the time of other things, food and nutrition is a key to his engagement. And just to confess to Akin, when we were working on AGRA, Mr. Annan said that AGRA is too small for Akin's efforts. We need him for something else. And I told him, honestly speaking, the best place for him is the African Development Bank, if it can work out, because that's where he can make significant impact given the resources that the bank has. So, Akin, I can tell you how happy he is. He probably expressed it to you, but I can tell you how happy he is that you are here leading Africa in terms of the most important sector of the bank's engagement. And I think we will deal with other matters, but just to let you know that he is extremely happy about what is happening here.
I know that Tekle has been a great friend for a long time, but I didn't realize he was a prophet as well. So now I know. But thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We'd like to spend, as this is the first business meeting of the African Leaders for Nutrition, we'd like to spend the next 45 to 50 minutes to get guidance from the champions on the key areas for the ALN in order to be able to take it to the next steps with your guidance and with the champions' guidance. So we have provided some documentation related to what we think the ALN champions would like to see. So basically, we have three main documents here to get your guidance on. That is the concept note, which sort of outlines briefly what the ALN will be doing. And then the scorecard itself, which you have spoken about, just what we think it could do, it might look like, and how does it become the instrument for the ALN. We also would be making a short presentation on the proposed financing instrument. This is just the beginning of a thinking, and with your guidance, with the champions' guidance, we would be able to develop it further, and we welcome your advice and guidance on the new suggestion for the bond, which is going to be central to this kind of an instrument. We'll then maybe have a short discussion on the presentation at the AU Summit, as His Excellency President Kufuor mentioned, and we'll then just close with a summary of the proceedings with for your guidance and next steps. So with your permission, I'll request Sean to speak a little bit about the concept note.
Thank you, Sunita. I will try to be brief and give you, I think, a bit of flavor building on the comments I just made. And so first of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the concept note. I think that where I would like to frame it, and again, a bit from a personal perspective nutrition most fundamentally suffers an orphan problem. Because as President Adesina, President Kufuor, you've both said, it's not just one sector. And so this is the most fundamental issue, I think, with nutrition, is who owns it. Nobody dislikes nutrition, but is it the Minister of Health? Is it the Minister of Agriculture? Is it the private sector food industry? Is it the Social Development Minister? In fact, nutrition almost invariably falls between the cracks, and then, nobody is against good nutrition. Nobody necessarily has the day-to-day job of making sure it works. And when I reflect back of 2001, 2002, and the African Development Bank story I just told you, that was the fundamental issue. It wasn't that people at the African Development Bank weren't interested. It was just they couldn't even figure out, well, who would take ownership of this? And to me, at the most fundamental level, this is what the concept note is actually trying to address, of creating that ownership and political accountability for action on nutrition. And for our foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, we're really delighted to be able in this situation to support what was the brainchild of President Adesina and President Kufuor. And to see from November to now how quickly this has moved is incredibly exciting. And I think, if you look across regions of the world, while there have been statements about Africa perhaps not being ahead, in fact, from a political framework for nutrition, Africa is the best positioned of any region of the world, with the incredible Malabo declarations of 2014, anchored in the CAADP process, which started before that, the commitments to 15% of government budgets going into health, 10% government budgets going into agriculture, and a growing emphasis on social protection programs. These are the sectors that really need to grow and take nutrition seriously. But then it comes back to who will actually make sure it happens. And I think that that is the central, the core of the African leaders for nutrition, of having a core leadership which will take all of this incredible political commitment at the continental level and at individual national levels, and to make sure that's actually translated into action. Many of us were at the Lusaka soft launch, and just a bit of an anecdote. I personally don't think I've ever been in a nutrition meeting in my 35 years where it was standing room only, and we were people at the door begging to get in, and we didn't have enough room. That's incredible. And another part of that anecdote, the director of the Scaling Up Nutrition Secretariat was in the room, finally. She finally got wedged in. And she said, aside from the people on the stage, she barely recognized anybody in the room. Which means that, I think, as Jamie Cooper had said, we've reached a new audience. And again, instead of becoming this boutique operation that's a marginal health issue, it is becoming core to development. And when I hear, Excellency, a Minister of Finance give a speech on nutrition that rivals any I've seen, I say, hallelujah. And I think that's exactly the sort of mainstreaming leadership and ownership of the nutrition agenda that this concept note is trying to drive. There are really, I think, there are two fundamental pieces of work that the concept note is trying to drive. I will speak to the first is the continuing to make the case of the economic impacts for investing in nutrition. And again, that this is not the cost of investing in nutrition, but the opportunities to invest in nutrition. And then the accountability scorecard, to which Sandy will speak briefly. And as been said here, to my mind, what has been the real sea change is this understanding of the economic impacts. That we cannot have a continent that's going to emerge and thrive and show global leadership if in the case of Madagascar, 47% of our children are stunted, or on the average in the continent, 40% of our children are stunted. Because that means those children, they may have survived, and we know that undernutrition is the cause, a pivotal cause of 45% of all childhood deaths. But as importantly, those children who do survive, in fact, we've deprived them of their futures, we've deprived their families, their communities, and the whole nations of their futures. And so I think that constant generation of evidence of the economic case for investing in nutrition is going to be essential. I also think that within that, a word of caution, and this again I think is where the finance ministers will play an incredibly strong role. I had a discussion recently with a high-level official from a very high-burden country in Africa that in general has shown great leadership. And this person said, oh, well, now the donors have shown up a lot of interest in nutrition, so I can put my resources elsewhere. And I think that's also what we want to make sure does not happen, because at the end of the day, if domestic resources do not come to the table and are not taken seriously, the donors can only fit in to catalyze. I think the other thing, we talk a lot about increased financial resources, and that is absolutely essential. But I would say as important is the political capital that's being invested in nutrition, the political capital we're seeing today. And I think it's both that financial capital and the political capital being invested in nutrition. And this standing up of the Secretariat to really see the day-to-day functioning of the African Leaders for Nutrition, I think will be really critical to keep that advocacy, to make sure your voices are leveraged at the right time, at the right places, and the strategic communication. Again, as Jamie Cooper said, there's still a misunderstanding of what nutrition is, and because it's so complex, there's a conflation often between, oh, nutrition is just growing more staple crops, or it's other things, and not understanding. And so we need to actually have the strategic communication that translates that complexity into very simple, actionable things for the individual actors that can be then held to account. So I think that those are really the fundaments of the concept note. And I think it's a great privilege for us at the Gates Foundation to be part of this. Thank you very much.
I think I'm next up to follow Sean here. I'm Sandy Thomas from the Global Panel, and I'd just like to begin by bringing greetings from Sir John Beddington, who, with former President John Kufuor, co-chairs the Global Panel. He also sends his greetings to the Minister, to President Adesina, and to the distinguished guests that we have here. I think one of the things that he feels most excited about is that, for him, this initiative is par excellence, probably it's the best example, probably, of what we have, of what the Global Panel was set up to do, funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and DFID in the UK government. The idea was to get visionary leaders of influence to be able to bring their influence to drive change in the nutrition agenda at a time when there are great opportunities to do so, when we have globalization, urbanization, and many positive things happening around the world. And he sees this example as precisely, in many ways, in his mind, the kind of thing that the Global Panel was setting out to do. So from that germ of an idea, he's absolutely thrilled that different stakeholders, funders, governments are stepping up to take part and be a part, essentially, of this new initiative. So, again, he congratulates you all. So I've been asked to say a few words about the scorecard. We've already heard a lot of endorsement this morning from different people about the idea of the scorecard and why it's such an important part of the ALN initiative. In many ways, it will provide a robust evidence base which people can use as a basis for discussion and as a basis for making decisions to accelerate action. Now, there's an outline of the scorecard from page 15 onwards, and there's also an illustration of what a scorecard might look like, some of the sections there, so you might like to look at that, and I'll just say a few words about it. So this scorecard is not just going to be for the ALN, it's going to be for all the partners that the ALN seeks to engage, whether it's civil society, governments, the private sector, who want to see how things are progressing in nutrition and where action is best focused. And it's going to have credibility because it's going to use excellent sources of material. There will be gaps, of course, and highlighting those gaps will also be an important outcome of this work. It'll be updated each year, presented at the AU Summit, and African leaders will come together around not only the scorecard but also the economic analysis that the Secretariat is going to produce. Now, there are a variety of ways in which this scorecard will give us a snapshot of what's happening at a high level across the continent and also in time about what's happening nationally. Because clearly what's happening nationally in aggregate is going to give us that high-level picture. So it will focus across a range of targets and goals, and it will have a number of sections which are itemized on page 15. So it'll be the place where you can see progress in high-level continental and global targets. So you'll be able to see as a stakeholder progress on the World Health Assembly targets, the Malibu Declaration, SGD2. So this will be bringing this together in a way that will be more powerful. It'll also monitor interventions, both nutrition-specific and nutrition-sensitive, and it'll use data from a variety of sources to do that. It'll also look at policy and legal provisions, again using a variety of sources, to get a sense of how institutions are progressing to drive policy change in nutrition. So that side of it's going to be very important. It's not just the interventions. Financing, we've been hearing about this morning, again, tracking financing on nutrition, including domestic support will be in there, and also a set of measures around cross-sector responsibility. So how is it going to do this? Well, clearly the Secretariat will play a key role here. There are a number of sources of material, regularly updated material, that will be essential components to drive this process. Many of you will know the Global Nutrition Report, for example, and also the ALMA scorecard for malaria that we've been hearing about this morning. That's going to be an important model for us who are interested in this, and also there'll be nutrition indicators in there that will also be useful. So when we look at the illustration of the scorecard, which you can see on page 17 and 18, that gives you an idea of what this scorecard looks like. You can see these different kinds of indicators laid out in the categories I've just mentioned. And obviously there are some challenges here, but there are some great opportunities. And as I said earlier, highlighting where there are gaps, and there certainly will be gaps in data, will also help incentivize other countries to be able to make good some of those gaps and make the changes necessary. So you can see at the very top there, we've got the internationally agreed nutrition targets, WHA, where that'll include, for example, stunting, wasting, anemia, these very important indicators, talking about which countries are on course, off course, and what the target should be. Nutrition-specific interventions, we've heard about iodized salt consumption, vitamin A supplementation. These will be in there and the coverage mapped across the continent. And what it will take to get annual scale-up to get full coverage. Nutrition-sensitive interventions, sanitation, improving drinking water, these also need to be on the scorecard because they are, of course, part of the picture. And again, it will be coverage and annual scale-up approaches that will be in there. The part of the scorecard that will deal with policy and legal provisions is going to be one of the most variable in the sense that lots of different things will go in there, right from, for example, wheat fortification legislation to other indicators which will look to see whether under or over nutrition are mentioned in national plans. Again, in financing, there are going to be some challenges there. Is there a budget line for nutrition in particular countries? These measures some of them will be yes or no, some of them will be ranked more numerically. And then finally, gender indicators will be included there because, of course, as we've heard, that has such important bearing on nutrition outcomes. So exactly which of these go in the final version, which will be about a page long, be very compact, will be the subject to advice from technical people over the next few months. So what we'll end up with is a one-pager here that will bring in the best of these targets and indicators for them, and at the same time, as experience grows, be able to include more national coverage across the continent to build that scorecard to be both continental and national. So I think in sum, this scorecard has made some very good progress already, and it'll be refined over the next few months. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sandy. I think now what we'd like to get is from the panel members, the champions, is this the right direction? Is this the right focus for the ALN engagement? Are there any other roles for the scorecard that you would suggest that we pursue? I think the most important is that these are tools that we will need to have in order to move to the next step, and specifically the scorecard, which we hope to be able to present at the African Union. So we would be grateful for your guidance, discussions, questions to us.
Thanks very much, Sandy. I think this is great that we have started work on this. I think, as President Kufuor said, it's really the kind of instrument we need to, basically put everybody's feet to the fire and how we measure whether we're really doing what we are supposed to be doing. So this is highly commendable. So I really thank you, Sandy, and the EU Sunita and the global panel for the thought that has gone into this. So just some suggestions. On the policy legal provisions, you mentioned wheat fortification. I think it shouldn't just be wheat. It's a whole fortification thing. There's no reason why it should be wheat alone. So that should be much broader as we look at that. The other one is, I think we need some clarity about some specific interventions that needs to be scaled up and what those countries are doing in scaling them up. I think when we listened to the Minister of Finance of Madagascar, he talked about vitamin A, he talked about the breastfeeding, he talked about a couple of things that he said, universal salt iodine, supplementary vitamin, food supplements, and breastfeeding, treatment of acute malnutrition, diarrhea. So I think we need some greater granularity about what are those big wins that we know will allow us to drive down the numbers. And then how do we assess what countries are doing in moving those big wins forward in a very clear way? I think that's the most important thing. I think, Sean, you've been around this area for so long, you know that you all debated to death what the interventions should be, and we know them. And I think the outcome of the meeting in Washington during the spring meeting of the World Bank, when we had this discussion, I think there was a report produced by, what is that report, Sean?
Excuse me, the investment framework was analysis done by the World Bank and Results for Development to say, looking at the 6 World Health Assembly targets, what would actually take financially to get them, and then so it went through all the evidence of the nutrition-specific interventions and costed them out, and then it did then a subset of, well, if resources are limited, what would be your top priority investments, which, in fact, I think that the Honorable Minister of Finance from Madagascar clearly has already read that, because most of them figured in your speech.
Yeah. We just need to get clear so that it's, if you're going to measure, let's measure things that we know we can monitor, people should do as well, that we can promote. On the issue of the financing, when we look at financing for nutrition, I think we tend to overcompensate on it to the public side. I think that people will say, what's the share of the budget that goes to health and goes to agriculture and goes to this and that and that? And we've been around this mountain several times, right? That's important, public financing for this kind of things that have huge social multiplier effects. There's no doubt about it, when we should have them. But I thought that maybe you should consider also private sector-driven innovative instruments for nutrition will be also very important to measure. I think that may, in fact, have huge impact, and we never really thought about them a lot as much as we should. So I just want to encourage you to look at those instruments as well. And then to be quite clear about how we're going to be measuring progress. Because if we just say, are we on course or out of course, it doesn't really, tell me much, right? It's what's really happening. Is malnutrition level going up? Is it going down? What's stunting level? What's obesity level? What's going on with wasting? So that we have explicit, that we can measure and therefore be able to track better. I think that will be much more useful as well. So there are just some suggestions, and I'll let the rest of the panel speak. Let's have Jamie. Jamie's...
I thought you just read my mind and spoke for me. Do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Jimmy.
Yeah, so I just saying that I think you read my mind and spoke for me. I do think there are first wave interventions that we really want to push and focus, and that's where our bang for the buck is right now. And agree with where the conversation's going too, about continuing the momentum of extending who is progressing this, and everybody being bought in and pushing in the same direction. But I'm really pleased to hear these next steps, and that they're further along than I understood them coming into this meeting. So my full support. And also just want to say, I hope the work that we do with the African, whoops, I'm losing. Can you hear me still?
Yeah, we can hear you, yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say, I'm hoping some of the work that we do together with the African Development Bank, which again is to look for where there's that segue between agriculture and nutrition initially, and some of our work in Ethiopia, Big Wind's work in Ethiopia, which is very much focused on water, and where that segue is with high value nutrition gains, that will ultimately feed into the evidence that we use, and how we again find those really smart interventions that, if we can prioritize and use our resources strategically, that it will all be part of a rolling sequence and building blocks. So that's it for me.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. If there are no, yes, Tijani, Sean, and Zura.
Thank you. Just two quick points. For FAO, we have the annual state of food insecurity, which is concrete global data, which is there. And I think it can add value for the ALN to be specific on what areas it will require to refine. That will be a major thing that I will say, which is a global issue, and it's acceptable. The second one is the state of food and agriculture. Here also we have a concrete mapping of the state of food and agriculture. Now, how does food and agriculture contribute to nutrition is the link that the bank ALN could also be able to request for modification so that we can get clearly what specific indicators it will want to report. I think those two are the things I would say. Thank you.
Sean, Zura, and then Professor Buffer.
Thank you. In listening to this, I realized I had two questions, a comment, and a word of caution. So the two questions, one, which I failed to mention in my introduction, is, and I think we're all in agreement that we want to make sure the African Leaders for Nutrition is complementary to and accelerating what's also going on globally. And so how do we make sure that there's the most purposeful overlap between the Scaling Up Nutrition movement and ALN? And one thought is perhaps through, I think we have some joint members of African ALN members who are also on the Scaling Up Nutrition lead group. There's still several African leaders who are on the Scaling Up Nutrition lead group who might not be within the broader ALN. So a question will be, do we want to make sure we try to have that overlap even more purposeful? The second question actually comes back to the financing issue of it's what is going to be useful, and perhaps this is for the ministers of finance to reflect on. Often when you look for a budget line of nutrition, it automatically think, oh, nutrition, health is the budget line of the Ministry of Health, but we actually want to make sure there are nutrition budget lines in other sectors, and without going, so what is going to be the most actionable about tracking nutrition resources, I guess, is my question. The comment was on the last bullet of the policy and legal provisions of the Sun institutional transformations, and this is just what I've observed. When countries have signed up to join the Sun movement, they've made commitments to have this multi-stakeholder alliance that's coordinated at a higher political level. But I've observed more often than not that in reality it's still some nutrition focal point buried down at a third level of a Ministry of Health somewhere who does not have the political mandate or ability to actually then coordinate across sectors. So I think what we've seen in Madagascar, for example, with the National Nutrition Office, et cetera. So I think that is going to be very fundamental of tracking that. And then just the word of caution on the targets, the World Health Assembly targets. Those we're not going to see a lot of movement on a year-to-year basis. What we'll see movement on, as you pointed out, President Adesi, and I think that's right, is actually the coverage. We will see, there's always going to be a lag between the actual status indicators and the coverage indicators, and so we don't want to discourage people falsely by not seeing the aggressive movement on something like stunting, because that's, but where we can see real quick change is going to be on the coverage indicators, what we're actually doing to address the problem. And so I think where that word of caution is perhaps also a question of how do we make sure we're not leading with indicators which will be discouraging, but leading with indicators that are also very actionable in the short term, which I think are on the coverage side and that policy financing side. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks very much. Those are excellent points. Maybe just to help us on those is, on the budget side, maybe the minister, I was going to say that maybe if we have this coalition of ministers of finance for nutrition, which I mentioned earlier, they can help us think through the questions that you raised in terms of what's the best way to actually account for nutrition budgeting within different things. So I'll let the minister have a say on that. The other one is, I think sometimes when we take a look at indices like these and scorecards, you may have countries where you're not moving as fast as you want, or you may be pockets of great things that are actually happening there. And so I wanted to suggest that we also consider going along with this scorecard, things like success stories. So Because success stories, you can find, even in some countries that you don't have high level of expenditure on nutrition, but you're doing some really great things that others can learn. So that gives people that sense of, say there's a lot of things going on, there's lessons we can learn, but even in places where for budget reasons, they may not be at the number you want, but look, they're having some good successes. I think it brings the life, the voice, and the face to the scorecard, right? So it's not just statistics running around, the numbers just running around. So I think that's that one. Now, on the issue of the financing, I think we should, as I said, look for indicators that allow us to show dynamism on financing nutrition. So away from just the classic one, we all say, well, what's the percentage that the government put? It's just like the CADA targets. What's the, and we all beat up ourselves on that. But there's so much going on in terms of private financing of agriculture. I mean, like Grow Africa, all the things that we do. So I think that we should find a small group of experts that can help us out on really developing, Sean, these nutrition social impact bonds. I think that when I raised it first at the meeting that Bill also spoke at you were there in Washington, was very well received by the World Bank and all the others involved. So I think we need a small team to really do the financial engineering on that and how that's going to work. And I think linking that to the coalition of ministers of finance for nutrition will be the way in which we might be able to really get this. But let me let the minister have some thoughts on this.
La nutrition est un secteur transversal, impliquant effectivement la santé, l'éducation, etc. Dans le cas particulier de Madagascar, nous avons confié en fait ce problème de nutrition-là au ministère de la Population, qui va donc travailler en étroite collaboration avec les autres ministères concernés pour bien s'assurer qu'on arrive à atteindre les objectifs qu'on s'était fixés. Bien sûr, ce n'est pas encore vraiment l'idéal, mais c'est la solution que nous avons trouvée pour bien s'assurer que le budget est là et qu'on utilise vraiment ce budget pour atteindre les objectifs fixés par les différents ministères concernés. Concernant peut-être ce plan conceptuel, moi aussi j'ai une petite question à poser. On a dit tout à l'heure que le défi est énorme en matière de malnutrition, que ça nécessite, à part le capital humain, ça nécessite également surtout des capital financiers. Donc le problème qui se pose, c'est tout simplement de savoir si l'aspect renforcement de capacité est inclus dans ça, parce que, étant donné l'importance des financements à attendre, il peut y avoir un risque de problème de capacité d'absorption. Donc ça, c'est la question que je me pose pour bien s'assurer qu'on s'achemine vraiment vers la réalisation de ces différentes activités-là avec efficacité. Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think just very quickly to address the minister's concern, when we come to the financing presentation or the financing instrument presentation, we have made certain suggestions to address the priority areas which His Excellency has indicated, including the capacity building. But let me do the rest of the tour de table, and then we can maybe pick up on some of the responses. Ms. Vera?
So what I just wanted to kind of put on the table, maybe we could add this to the policy piece of the scorecard, is the breastfeeding support piece. I mean, I know maternity protection has some of that in there, but unless we have specific policy and support for women, especially in the workplace breastfeeding, we're never going to get to this exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months. We just had breastfeeding week a few months ago, and we had a big meeting in Nigeria. And a lot of the testimony coming from working mothers is that they wanted to, but they had to go back to work after 3 months. So even if maternity policy is enforced, somehow there's no other support, either legal or job-wise or anything, that enables them to continue to breastfeed their children afterwards. So I think this is something that we really need to think about how we measure and encourage employers and everybody else to really do. I was working at actually on Wall Street when I had both my kids, and I was able to continue to breastfeed them from when I went back to work because my employer made specific accommodations. And this was a Wall Street company, which is notoriously not supportive of this kind of thing. So I think we really need to think about if we want to push the envelope to this 6-month exclusive breastfeeding place, we need to specifically have it as a point under policy. Thanks.
Thank you, Zura. I think Professor Bafor.
Yeah, thank you. Just to follow up on the point made earlier by Buka, asking about the linkage between food and agric and nutrition. And I was just thinking about perhaps the 2.5 nutrition sensitive interventions, one possible indicator that should relate to food production. You know, there is this emerging land grab in Africa where food production statistically could be increased in some countries, but in terms of access and availability for local consumption, it will be a problem. So the idea of looking at food production locally, but more importantly, the accessibility and availability of food for local consumption. I'm not sure how we couch that, but I'm just reflecting on that linkage. Thank you.
I was just saying that, oh, sorry, well, the ag experts, you can have the floor.
There's one dimension that could be added to the scorecard, is learning and knowledge sharing. Because in many cases with nutrition intervention, the response is better if people are better informed. And knowing what to do is a very important component in the decision-making process. So that could be captured also how people are well informed about nutrition campaign. A second thing is that in many African countries, nutrition training is deficient. In some countries, it's only in medical school or maybe in the agriculture school that you find some training in nutrition, but there are no department per se training nutritionists. And also having nutritionists maybe located in hospitals, in medical centers, could go a long way in improving the level of nutrition in a country. So how do we capture these elements in a scorecard designed to follow how much progress we are doing?
I remember when I was at Rockefeller Foundation, and we were trying to do the Africa Fertilizer Summit, which you will all remember. And I went to see you, and yeah. And I remember going to see the DG of FAO at the time, Dr. Jack Doof. And it was so complex, just like nutrition that we're talking about. It's so complex, it's so multifaceted, and so on. And I remember an advice he gave me, so I thought I would share it with you. We were doing Africa Fertilizer Summit, and he said to me, well, look, I will support you on this. I will put my weight behind it. But here's an advice, and he called it the Christmas tree advice. He said, if you look at a Christmas tree, everybody comes in and you put a lot of things on it, this gift from my uncle, everybody. He said, all of a sudden, then the Christmas tree falls down because it's too much hanging on the tree. And I think we should avoid that. Because when you come into a scorecard, you want to make it as easy, clean, few things that you can measure, and therefore selecting the most important things that people can see. I think that's the most, I think there's a lot of, in terms of the programmatic interventions that we are going to support, we can put a lot of details into those. But scorecard should be very easy to see, where you can measure. I think that's that's important. Now, one point that Bukanga raised, which we might turn into a way for the scorecard, which I think is a very valid point he made, is nutrition promotion. Because the very fact that you have budget in nutrition doesn't really mean that you're doing enough promotion of nutrition. So awareness of how to do things. So we can find a way in which, where it's awareness, promotion, index, whatever it is, something, the more people know that here are the interventions. You mentioned throughout the breastfeeding, all those things maybe into some kind of composite index that allows us to know how much of promotion effort is going into that would be very helpful. And let's make our scorecard easy to understand and easy to act on. President Kufuor mentioned to us in Ghana an insight into when he was president and how people would come into the cabinet meetings. And I remember he said something that their job is to convince him as president why he should take a particular course of action. But the clearer they are and the simpler it is for him to get, the easier it was for him to make a decision. So I think we should keep what we want people to do with it. Who are the audience that to take action on it? And the messaging of it will be such that they can easily, and I'll let President talk about this, really get it. Another example I want to give on this is when we get too technical, we lose decision makers. Right? The technical thing is great for us. We all understand what it is, but decision makers don't necessarily understand too many of the technical things. And when I was in grad school in the US, one of my professors, who was a dean, had served as the deputy Secretary of Agriculture under President Ronald Reagan. And he's an economist, globally known economist. And he said he went to President Reagan to tell him about some policies. And he said he told President Reagan about supply elasticity. And when he said supply elasticity, President Reagan asked him and said, I asked you to give me a solution to something. I didn't ask you to bring an elastic with it. So it just tells you how certain times that you understand. And he said from that time, he never used any economic jargon again in making his point. So I just want to say that let's craft it. It will require communication for impact. I think ability to understand it is more important to act on it. Mr. President.
Well, Mr. President, I think you've been explicit enough and clear. But truly, that his president doesn't make him an expert, perhaps in anything. He's just a people's man. The people preferred him to be president, they voted for him. But then you would need experts who should know that a leader is accountable politically. At the end of the day, the people would vote either to retain him or to sack him. So in this thing we are talking about must be people-owned. I believe Sean made the point. It's not, we are talking of high-level meetings at the AU. Those people, the leaders composing the forum, have tenures. Well, hopefully Africa would go by constitutional tenures. If it's 4 years, 4 years. And the politician is always looking at the time span there. If you go give long-winded solutions, technically perhaps correct, but the president will look at you and say, that man, does he know what the whole thing is about? Because he's thinking of how to be returned within the next 2 years or 3 years. And so he thinks of now, and at best, medium term. So the things we are proposing here should always factor the political lifespan into account. So I believe the president has made it fine. I said in the intervention I made that the high-level people also tend to be like divas or prima donnas. In fact, they tend not to want to, at the summits, listen to people who are not of their kind, not even their ministers. Once they get there into the summit, and if you are not president, you are appearing before them, you have to be careful. You must assume airs of humility, and you coax. You massage them so they will listen to you. If you go and you want to show off what you know and this, or if that's the impression, then you can be sure they won't take any advice you are giving them. So please, what we're trying to do, as important as it is, one, our president here should begin to work to get this on the agenda of the next summit. Otherwise, last minute, the Commission will tell you, sorry, there's no place on the agenda for your item. So work on that. And perhaps you, the President, should be invited to go and present this thing to the President. Of course, you would have done the background work and listen the support of the champions. Otherwise, you get one or two of the presidents who want to posture like everything is all right in their countries, coming to torpedo this otherwise fine thing. So this is the contribution I want to make.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think it's excellent. They're excellent contributions because at the end of the day, we want something that will influence decision makers to be able to get the results we're looking for. So I think your word of wisdom and advice on this is really very valuable to see the simplicity, the humility of presentation, the realism of the timeline, sensitivity to, so all these things have to be taken into consideration. So two things is, what I wanted to suggest is that, Mr. President, maybe perhaps we consider getting the, Sean mentioned the SON group there, but we also have the AUC NEPA group on nutrition and so on. So in how we come up with the scorecard, that we are inclusive and make sure we get the necessary input. Of course, we still distill down to what's the basic usable minimum for the impact that the president is talking about. But that's a consultation, that is a sense of inclusiveness that people feel that, yes, this is something that they can actually also use their own networks to promote and so on. I think that's very important. So it doesn't feel that it's, they're not being consulted. Now, the other thing that the president mentioned, it's about getting this on the agenda of the AU. I think this is crucial for us to do. Probably a three-way approach that one could suggest, as Mr. President suggested, is to obviously get the AU African Union Commission chairperson to get it. And you can brief us on your conversations. I know you've had a lot of discussions with them, so maybe you can brief us on that. The second one is the advocacy role of President Kufuor himself as the leader to help us with the heads of state and also president of Madagascar. Because you need a few presidents that will, president listen to president. So when, as you said, so they'll listen to you and then they'll listen to President Madagascar and all the other presidents that we want we want it to be not our agenda. We want it to be their agenda, something that they own, they push, they can mobilize support on, and that's very important. So related to that then is, I think, communication. We've got to have a very good communication plan, well crafted about this, with the sensitivities that Mr. President has mentioned. I think that's going to be important. But thank you, sir, for what you said about my role. I think I'll play that role. I can also hide behind him. He's so big that I can find my way around. Be sure that he can take some of the heavy lifting also for us, and so can Mr. Annan and all the others. So, but very well noticed, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Just to also, as requested, the conversation with our colleagues in the African Union, we've been working very closely with the technical teams. They have been part of our working group discussions as well. We had several discussions with them in Addis after the Lusaka launching. So we've made very good progress at the technical level, and we've been working very closely, and then there's a lot of convergence of ideas between what needs to be done and where we are heading with the nutrition agenda on the continent. I think the next step on the presentation at the summit is going to be very helpful, and I will work with the Office of His Excellency also to get it on the agenda and continue to reach out to the AUC chairperson's office. So if there aren't any comments, we may move to the financing instrument very, very quickly, because I'm just mindful of the time and also to leave some more time for discussion. We are proposing an initial thinking, which is really to develop an instrument to help support the scorecard and really, as we say in the bank, operationalize the scorecard and the outcomes we want to see on the continent. These are a few ideas for your guidance, and so that we can also, as the President suggested, have an expert team help us to think through these ideas and to develop really a really good instrument that responds. First of all, on the title, we are suggesting two options: financing for nutrition accountability and results, or the Grey Matter Infrastructure Fund. It's just something to think about. We could also come up with more innovative ideas and more sort of ones that respond to the needs. Obviously, the need for such a financing instrument is clear. We know the SDG 7, or the achievements or the actions we need to achieve SDG 7 are going to require significant financial resources. The President mentioned already there's a cost of about $7 billion estimated. So really we need to move very quickly on financing. We also know the economic cost of malnutrition is still very high. We have the report from the Global Panel. We do know that the impact of investing in the grey matter infrastructure is very high. There are positive outcomes and very quick positive outcomes we need to leverage on. We also know that a number of the African countries do have nutrition in one way or another within their priority development programs for investments. But again, the issue there is that still the financing gap remains quite high. We also know that the private sector needs further incentives. It's a strong player in the investments in nutrition, but we still need to find the right incentives to get the private sector working with us. So what do we think would this kind of an instrument do? We think it's going to be very important to have the results and impact potential, because it's really going to be based on the scorecard, and the scorecard itself promotes self-monitoring and results. So an instrument based on this scorecard is going to be very focused on the results and the outcomes rather than inputs and outputs. We also think that such an instrument would provide a paradigm shift, because it allows us to think beyond one-off investments, both at the partners level and at the government level. It goes beyond that. We also believe that it has a strong incentive focus, because because it's based on the results, once there is, the way the instrument would work is that as there is more progress towards results and outcomes in nutrition, there would be a possibility to access more windows in the financing instrument. So it is sort of self-motivating, self-growing kind of an incentive. You do better, you get more money. So that sort of is in more of a bigger incentive to countries possibly to continue to invest. It has a strong country ownership because it's based on the country outcomes and needs and priorities as will be defined in the scorecard. So it's not something that is external, it's not global, it's really focusing on the outcomes based on the country's needs. What would be some of the possibilities for funding? It would be possibly, as we have seen, the most important needs, grants for institutional support and capacity building. Those are some activities that would be considered. matching grants to government programs, because we did speak a little bit about country financing. Sean spoke about it. If we were going to support investments in nutrition, it could be matching grants so that we don't see the domestic investments going down as we increase our investments in this area. We could also consider technical assistance grants to specific nutrition investment funds. So if, say, for example, there was an investment fund which is commercial-based, maybe a little bit more focusing on private sector investments, this particular instrument would also be able to provide technical assistance grants to incentivize more investments, commercial investments in the nutrition space. In the long term, we could also, as the instrument grows, becomes mature, there could also be a possibility to include a window on concessional loans to match private sector investments. Again, this could be in the long term as the instrument matures. And eventually, of course, more and more private sector-oriented instruments such as risk guarantees. So these are some of the options which are possible in such an instrument should we consider this to go ahead. What kind of activities do we think could be eligible? Of course, capacity building is a priority for our work in getting the outcomes and results. Knowledge products, as we said, the economic analysis would be very important, lessons learned. We think a big area in this discussion is research and technology innovation. As the President mentioned, it's going to be important that we think about new tools, new instruments to promote better nutrition, new research in this area. So this, the instrument, the funding instrument could also support these kinds of activities. We also think that it could be important to consider community-based socio-economic infrastructure support. I think this is the lessons we are sort of gaining from our investments in the health sector, in the water supply and sanitation sector. Support to community infrastructure is going to be important if we want to be able to, say, for example, reduce the workload for women while they're pregnant or doing other work at home. So this could be something to be considered. Obviously, health systems supporting grey matter infrastructure, better information, better training skills for the primary healthcare. Those are some kinds of activities that could be considered. Emergency situations, obviously this is going to be an important window. In some cases, emergency grants are going to be very important to address certain crises. Data collection, as we think about the scorecard as the instrument for us to help think around investing for results, data collection and capacity building in the countries on data collection is going to be important. A lot of work and a lot of support is going there, but we think it may be necessary to increase. And last but not least, an example is technical assistance, again, in countries to be able to get some of the policy reforms, some of the programs right on track. A window for technical assistance to the countries would be helpful. What is the partnership value added? Obviously, the African Leaders for Nutrition high-level political dialogue opens up a lot of new areas for commitment, new heads of states also committing to do better. We also think that the partners are joining forces, so it provides that one voice, as we have heard today, the need to work together. Obviously operationalizes the nutrition scorecard, which is going to be an important tool for monitoring. We also believe that the value added is the one focus on human capital development, as the President spoke about this morning, to make sure that we open up other areas by investing in nutrition. And last but not least, if the fund were to be hosted by the African Development Bank, we already have fiduciary safeguards and mechanisms which are accepted by all African nations and all our partners. So it wouldn't be something that we need to work on from scratch. So with that, we do request guidance from the high-level panel members, and with your guidance, we would commission the feasibility study with the required financial expertise to develop such an instrument for your consideration. Thank you.
Just a thing on the structuring this. I think following up from the meeting in Washington and the Investing for Nutrition, and the personal drive and commitment that myself and the President of the World Bank have on this issue, it's very important then that this be coordinated with the World Bank. And I think once you've put this together, myself and President Kufuor can write a letter, including AU Chair, to President Jim Kim of the World Bank, because I think it's something we should work on together. So IFC, I think World Bank will be key for us to be able to pull it together, because we want a fund that can work at scale, right? So we need to pull others into that. So let's just keep that in mind as we go on. Just a point of information. I think that President Kufuor, I forgot to mention in the beginning that I actually did have a conversation with Ambassador Quinn, the president of the World Food Prize, and I've invited him to join the panel, the Africa Leaders for Nutrition. He has accepted, and I think that's huge, because if you look at what has been done by the World Food Prize to recognize 4 laureates just looking at nutrition, and literally all the 4 that they recognize are the one working on nutrition for Africa, all of that. So I think I just wanted to make sure that information is communicated.
Thank you. I just wanted to perhaps put this in the context of some of the reflection that's going on globally around nutrition financing. And the financing for nutrition is extremely fragmented. It's fragmented at the national level for reasons we've just discussed, but then also at the global level it's extremely fragmented, because you have donor funding that will go through bilateral donors. You have certain programs that are set up, for example, GASP, the Global Agriculture and Food Security Program, which are available for nutrition-sensitive agriculture. Recently, the Global Financing Facility for Every Woman, Every Child, where you can get health sector interventions for nutrition funded, World Bank loans through IDA, et cetera. And as part of the Scaling Up Nutrition movement, we've recognized this fragmentation means it's extremely difficult for countries to navigate that fragmented landscape. And we're trying to map out that landscape to see, okay, is it better to try to pick a few big instruments and make them more consolidated? Or do you try to get a sort of a user's guide for nutrition people in country to see, well, what are these different resources? So I think it would be very important to see where would such an instrument fit within that landscape, and make sure there have even been some recent relatively smaller Unit Life was created, the Power of Nutrition. So on one hand, the more the merrier, because we want more funding for nutrition, it's essential. But we also don't want to make life so difficult at the end of the day that the individual nutrition program in a country is having to go to 17 different pots of money. That makes it very difficult. And so I think what I'm trying to say is that there is also some global work on trying to understand this landscape better, and then how can we make a more coherent funding landscape. I think my second word of caution is just of sequencing of this. What's being proposed here is also in itself a huge undertaking, and I think first perhaps focusing on the setting up the Secretariat and getting the scorecard working. and then starting, perhaps doing the preparatory work in collaboration with what's happening at the global level for the funding landscape, so that we build on the momentum right now that's around here and then start unpacking the financing options.
Thank you very much, Sean, for that. I think that makes an awful lot of sense to me. Because the first two that you raised, which is the secretariat, getting the ALN secretariat fully established, and that should be the first priority, and also the scorecard, which so just to nail those together, and then we can link it to the political support behind the change of agenda we want to see in Africa. But then we can have a group simultaneously working on these financing instruments, and so Sunita, you, Sean, and others coordinating with the folks at the World Bank that are doing the investment things and so on, so that we have a robust instrument. I fully agree with Sean that we don't want to have splintering of efforts. I think we need to have consolidated financing system, a financing system, which means the private sector is part of that, philanthropy fund is part of that, that allows us to move the agenda forward. And also including some of the things about the nutrition social impact funds. And also I like very much what you proposed here about the incentives. Because one of the problems is that when you're doing well, and everybody says you're doing well, but you're not getting support for doing well. So why would you want to do well? So I think that's the idea. That idea is here, and that's a good idea, that we can help those that are doing well to scale up. And I think success begets success. So rather than dissipate efforts everywhere, where the political will is, where the action is happening, where results have been achieved, they ought to be incentivized to do more.
Perhaps it's early days yet for us to congratulate ourselves, even with the beginning. But I still want to say congratulations, because I have a feeling this initiative will succeed. I say so because of the factoring in of the incentive of funding. I happen to have been there at the launch of the peer review mechanism, the intention of which really was fantastic, very good. It was to engender good governance on the continent, because many of the drawbacks of the continent could be placed at the doorstep of poor governance. But what was the reaction? It was also very high level. Then I think the membership of the union was something like 53 or so. The immediate reaction on the proposal at the summit was for about 30 or so of the membership to work and subscribing. Why? Because they thought opening your governance system for inspection by technocrats who would then make a report to the summit, and then bringing the presidents one after the other come and defend on the findings of the might endanger their tenure in office. So I think about 20 or so of the presidents initially agreed, went ahead. As I speak, I really do not know the performance of the mechanism, peer review mechanism, which really was fashioned to help grow good governance in the country. The politicians or the presidents didn't immediately see the benefits. But with this initiative, when we talk of mobilizing financial support, and then the scorecard that would also enlist the cooperation and encouragement of partners, donor community, even private sector and that sort of thing, which would help governments who could not make allocations on their bigger budgets to support nutrition directly. I have a feeling all presidents will be sort of cooperative and reasonable. So I believe we are hitting it off in the right direction. And I want to thank you, Mr. President, again for great initiative, and all the members around the table for the hard work we've done all within 2-3 hours, which might prove to be positively revolutionary for our continent. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency, Mr. President. Let me thank you once again, sir, for coming. And I think, you know, a great example of what it is to have great leadership, good governance and accountability, which you demonstrated very well when you were president in Ghana. And I think that's how you won also the Warford Prize for the huge amount of work that you've done. And that even at this point in your life, you're committing yourself to a legacy of the future generation. That's what you said. And I think it's a great thing that you're doing. So we will look forward to working strongly with you to make sure that that legacy is solid, because it's a legacy for the future. The other kids can be as brilliant as you, tall as you, lanky as you, and then maybe they can be presidents like you. Let me thank the President of Madagascar for his tremendous amount of support. And thank you very much, Honorable Minister and Governor, Minister Rakotwari Manana. I couldn't pronounce the name of the people from Madagascar until I got there. But I must tell you who taught me how to do that. So I can actually say Rakotwari Manana. It was the President. When I was having my one-on-one meeting with him, I said, Mr. President, the names of Madagascar, it's so long. And how in the world do you manage to write it when you travel to the US and they ask you to fill forms? And he said, we write it up to the point where he stops it. But then he said that you break it down into 3. Some of it is the name of the father, some of it is grandfather, and so on. So you've got to really break it into parts. I say that to make the case in terms of how you do malnutrition issue with the numbers that you raised. We've got to also break it into doable, effective parts of Madagascar. I think if we can show great results in Madagascar, as the President said in his remark that you're number 4 globally in this, I think we will be really well on our way of showing what good leadership, accountability, finance, partnership support around solving problems can do. And as you know, we have selected Madagascar as one of our countries that we really going to focus on. So you can be sure of very strong support from us, from everybody on that. So thank you very much for coming, and thank you for all that you're doing already as Minister of Finance for your country, but also what you've accepted to also take on as lead minister of this coalition of Ministers of Finance around nutrition for Africa. I'm very grateful to you for that. Let me thank very much the FAO, the Director General, and congratulate you on the World Food Day. Thank you very much for his representation here. We as a bank look forward to very close partnership with FAO on this issue, to technical support, analytical support, but also programmatic support on ground with key countries where we can work, and we should work absolutely together. And it's great to see you, my brother, anyway, thank you for the great work you're doing. We look forward to further partnership with you. Let me thank Jamie. She's not there, but really communicate to her a great appreciation for her support and a constant engagement on this issue. I feel that the partnership with you and the MOU that we signed with you, but also with the Dangote Foundation, Israel and Shifu, is very critical for how we move things together. So your support to helping us to also deepen our capacity internally to deal with this is most appreciated. So let me thank you, Israel, for being here, and thank Aliko Dangote for his support. I saw him when he went to the north with Bono to go and look at the situation there. And, you know, when you have Africa's richest man, you know, committing his resources and his own personal effort to this issue, I think that is huge for us. So do convey to him a great appreciation. Let me thank Mr. Kofi Annan. I can tell you every time I talk to Mr. Annan, it's always an encouragement for me. And I'm very delighted that he is continuing to provide that leadership for us on this particular issue as well. So kindly communicate to him, convey to him my deepest appreciation for his leadership in many ways. And also thank him for being a prophet, and you are also a prophet and support. That I'm here, the support is very important. So thank you very much, Tesfai. And Tesfai, his wife, cooks very good rice. I can tell you why, because I'm a rice person. I eat rice all the time. So when I wanted to go and see him in Geneva, he said, if you can have rice, you can have it here at home. So, but greet your wife very much. Yes, thank you. Let me also thank Sean. You know, Bill and Melinda continue to be great inspiration for all of us and what they do. And I think for you as a foundation is the connection between health, education, water, sanitation. That is the key. And I think you said it in your remarks as well. So we welcome the partnership with you. As you can see, it's a partnership for action. And so we're so delighted with it, and we look forward to doing a lot more together with you. I know the African Union Commission is not, the chair is not here, but that partnership with the AU Commission is critical. And leadership is very, very crucial for us as we deal with this particular issue going forward. Of course, pushing this agenda forward, I need to mention two groups. First is to thank, it's our board, and I'm glad that Edie Belali is here, who's also the ED for Madagascar. You know, thank you for taking me to Madagascar, and thank you also for being here to listen and hear this tremendous amount of political support to what we are doing at the bank in this area. So I know you carry that also to the board discussion that we will have later as we scale up this crucial work. So thank you very much, Edie, for being here. And let me also thank all the colleagues around the table that have come from various places to be here. Very grateful to you. But now to the staff. You know, I must really thank you, Sunita, for a brilliant job that you and your team have done. You know, from the very moment that they organized the meeting in Lusaka, which was hugely successful, and following up with everybody has been really great. So thank you very much. But I know that you've been working very closely with the global panel, and I want to thank also for Sandy for a tremendous work with you, because I think that's how we were able to develop the index that we're talking about today, and also how we're going to be able to move that together. So, Professor Sandy Thomas, thank you very much, and do convey our appreciation as well to Professor Benedict for his leadership, global leadership, and support behind this initiative. To all the rest of the staff of the bank, thank you very much for all your hard work in making sure this was a very successful meeting, and Vice President Sipo and everybody else. Thank you very much. So the only thing that's remaining for me is thank the interpreters for a great contact. Basically that normally I say our interpreters here work with renewable energy, because I don't know how you'll be able to do this for so long a day, but thank you very much. We're most grateful for that. So we can go over to lunch and then conclude that. So thank you and thank you for listening.
We'll just have a group photo. Mr. Kone will advise us, and then we walk out to the festival.
Thank you very much.